Oh,
You're good.
we're ready. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. We are ready to start our Committee of the Whole meeting, April 16th, 2024. I welcome everyone and the council members. I excuse Councilwoman Diane Turner. I don't know where Councilwoman Rosalba Dominguez is. Maybe she'll come in soon. First thing, Mayor, thank you for being here, and Jennifer and Patty and audience members.
Rosalba's running late, she'll be here.
That's fine. So the first thing we need is the approval of the minutes. Do I have any questions, concerns, or anything about the minutes that were given to us? If not, I will take a motion for approval of the minutes of Committee of the Whole, March 19th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March 19th, 2024.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have first, second, everyone say aye.
Aye.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so now we're on to our first discussion. It is the 2024 legislative wrapped up. G.L. Critchfield, Corey Holdaway, and Dave Stewart.
That's hard to follow, Councilwoman.
Let me first introduce our lobbyists. Corey Holdaway is sitting next to me. David Stewart is next to him. Adam Hawk and Paul Pickett are new to the council. Pam, you may have seen these gentlemen last year. We have two of the best lobbyists in the state. Happy to work with them, and they're responsive, and we love what they do for us. This time of year, what we do is we have them come and kind of give us a download of what happened up there. They're up there pretty much daily and talking to everybody, and so they know some of the things behind the scenes, and they'll certainly know how legislation kind of evolved. So I think what we'll start with is just kind of an overview from each of you, what you felt the legislature did this year and how that affected us.
Sounds good. David, you want to go over?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, $29 billion was the state budget this year. It's,
When you served roughly, do you remember what was it? when you
yeah,
served?
it was three.
Sorry.
$3 billion. It's gone from $3 billion to $29 billion.
But I thought they
Wow.
were saying they didn't have a very good surplus of money there.
Well, when you're comparing to the prior 2 years of billions of dollars of surplus, then it feels like a really down year, even though they were, because a lot of that was they had set aside money in the last 2 years and put one-time monies into ongoing type of expenses, or I'm sorry, ongoing monies into one-time expenses, anticipating a much more severe kind of economic pullback that really didn't materialize. So what, was still in comparison, a lot less money, but what they were anticipating, budgeting towards and things. Again, one of the reasons why, to their credit, they get year over year over year with, one of the best managed states is where everybody else is taking, as I first said, taking one-time money and putting it into ongoing expenses that never, eventually got to pay the piper. Utah's been very, our bonding, the opposite, our bonding now is, we can go up to 90% of the value. I think we're in the high 40s, low 50%, which is record lows, and they continue to pay that down. So fiscally, the state, but yeah, the pitch was, the favorite phrase they used was a socks and underwear Christmas.
Yes,
And, but for that, it's still, I think part of the problem is we went from everybody gets a new car to socks and underwear. And so, it felt like it was, a lot less, but it was still, plenty there. But it's not quite.
No, that's good. So, the budget was obviously in the legislature. I think 80% or even probably 90% of the important work that they do up there is surrounding the state budget and how that affects the citizenry. Housing was a big issue. Affordable housing was a big issue. They spent a lot of time on that. How that affects possibly the future for the cities is there was a bill, House Bill 572, which was sponsored by Representative Spenlove. It was a Treasury bill, and they're taking TIF funds, Transportation Investment Fund money, on a loan of $300 million to be paid back, but that $300 million is kind of a lift for developers and to if they provide affordable housing. That's kind of the caveat there. So you're going to see a little bit of that over the course of the next couple of years. I think more attention to that. There was some work done around the transportation corridor as far as the rail goes, which I don't think is going to. I mean, Murray's already doing so much as far as that goes. I don't think there's going to need to be any worry there. And then there was a lot of work around energy. I know Dave was intimately involved with, and me to a lesser degree, as far as the IPA bill that ended up passing. And maybe you want to talk a little
Sure.
bit about the effects of that.
Yeah, and for those that, if you notice, when the governor ultimately signed it, kind of issued a letter with that, which he usually doesn't do, or a statement essentially saying that the work isn't done, that it was kind of at the end of session, there are pieces in there that really aren't going to work. And the legislature kind of was trying to somewhat hide behind, well, you know, there's certain things that got to happen before, you know, the bad stuff can happen. And the way, it was year 3 or 4 now of going through of a fight between the state and IPA as they transition from coal fire to gas fired plants. And in doing that, you know, and not just this bill, but several issues that, you know, the state wanting to reaffirm that we still love coal and there's a coal place here. I mean, Rocky Mountain Power, you know, the way they interact now with the Public Service Commission was changed, and the way that PSC will view coal power versus other. I mean, it's just a whole, you know, as a state where other states are pulling back, we wanted to double down on, we're all in for coal. Irony being that Rocky Mountain Power and IPAs are currently, I forget the exact percentage, but running at, I think, around 30 or 40% of capacity, largely because they don't have access to coal. And at times they've had to go to Wyoming and other places outside the state to get enough coal to run even the plant. And so, you know, one of the things that is, you know, as they extend, you know, the original plan of Rocky Mountain was to shut down 2 of their plants. Well, the legislature kind of pushed them into keeping those open now longer, but with IPA, if the state gets their way and kept them online somehow, there's not enough coal to do both. So it's just kind of this interesting dynamic where, you know, we're trying to protect this antiquated dinosaur that is, you know, just not the future. So, long story, go.
Go for it, and then I'll ask my question.
And so tons of negotiations went around. It started off in the Senate. You have, like I said, this has been building for a couple of years, and there's been some very draconian bills and things, and, you know, kind of came to a culmination this year where, as we're now getting closer and closer to the ultimate shutdown of the coal-fired plants and that transition happening, you know, over the next year. So those negotiations were going on. Ultimately, a bill passed out of the Senate, somewhat over the top of the objection of the sponsor that had things in there that IPA could live with. Well, you know, Corey and I and others that have been up there long with me, that was all just procedural. So they let that go, sent it to the House. Surprise, surprise, the House put in basically the exact same thing that they wanted, sent it back, they worked it out, and it went back to what the, you know, leadership had kind of driven that policy. And a lot of that policy is creating this entity that is commission or board or whatever they ultimately ended up calling it, that would come in and, you know, would work with IPA to petition the federal government for an additional permit to be able to keep the coal-fired plants open, as well as a bunch of other things the powers that committee has. They're supposed to commission a study and, you know, go through all that. And then if and when there's not a purchaser of it, you know, eventually oversee the wholesale or the sale of the plant, because there were people running around to the legislature saying, oh, if, you know, we would buy this plant tomorrow if it were for sale, but IPA won't sell it. Well, when you really dig into it, none of them have a balance sheet to buy a hundreds and hundreds of $millions plant, if not $1 billion, because of not only the cost, but the overall even liability of an asset that, you know, IPA knowing they were closing this is not maintained to continue an operation. It is it would take hundreds of millions of dollars just to operate the thing going forward, let alone continue to make it more efficient, even more effective that way. So,
Dave, can I ask a question? So when we're not on the Hill like you guys constantly, the talk was a little bit, we were kind of under the impression that it was gonna be okay for a minute. And then the last few days, there was something that came up and the talk was that whoever the person that was, I don't know if it was the person sponsoring the bill that did this, but talk was like they did it and wouldn't tell anybody what they were doing. Is that fact?
Yeah, well, can I? So Senator Owens represents that area. He carried the bill. And Representative Albrecht in the Senate, and the bill that passed out of the Senate wasn't something that he was real happy about. Went over to the House, Representative Albrecht, who also represents the Cole area, was the House sponsor. And then I forget who, there was somebody that substituted the bill.
Weiler was.
Weiler was in the Senate,
Yeah.
and then in the House, I think Albrecht's the one that proposed his own
Was it?
stuff.
Yeah, that's right. It was Weiler, or it was Albrecht. Yeah, and it was kind of I won't say shady, but it was. It left a bad taste in your mouth the way it was handled.
Because they said they had another $6 bill in their pocket and they weren't gonna show it to anybody.
Yeah, and it was
And I
late.
think that's very,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, and I was late, and so at the end of the day, I mean, the sixth sub was what passed that had some of the poison pills in it.
But the sixth sub also, though, was pretty much a reflection of the fourth sub.
Yeah,
I mean, so it was out there, and it was gonna, at least if you were like myself up there all the time, you knew this was happening. And kind of the mantra from IPA all along was, guys, do what you will, but at the end of the day, any mandates that you put in there, mandate that we have to sell the asset, mandate that we have to keep the asset running, because the problem is in the permit process with the federal government, part of that is we, being IPA, will shut down these coal-fired plants.
Yeah.
They can't just say, well, the state wants us to keep them going, so we're just gonna keep going. And EPA is not
Over
the
the
type.
top of the federal
Yeah, the
government.
federal government's not gonna be like, okay, well, that's fine if you wanna keep, especially it's coal, they hate coal. And so, anyway, so those types of mandates, that's where, they had changed that it wasn't treated as, because it used to be a political subdivision, they changed that, so it would affect bonding, they'd have to come back to the legislature to get, tax exempt bonds, which IPA was fine. It's like, look, reality is if we ever do those, we're fine to come justify it, it's not a big deal. And they were gonna talk about changing their board and everything else, and so the discussions all session long are trying to weave this, how do we give a win to the Senator Owens of the world, but yet not cripple, kind of basically this project and really seeing the future. We had, LA Power, who's a big, obviously, consumer of that energy, was out several times during session, including the CEO or whatever his official title is, the head guy, to meet with legislative leadership and talked about all kinds of additional energy investments and how do we look forward versus looking back. And it's like, guys, this, let alone the plant, there's no transmission. There's no ability, even if you could turn it back on, you can't get the power out anywhere. I mean, there's so many things. And when you have those quiet conversations with legislative leadership, those that aren't totally, into this will acknowledge me like, yeah, it doesn't work. But it's that game of politics of, well, I don't want to tell so-and-so. And so basically, let's keep it going, let it die of its own weight. When they do this study, it'll come back and say we can't, so therefore we want, and we're like, and that's where candidly IPA said, fine, we're fine. But when they come back and say, well, at the end of this process, you have to do these things, regardless of outcome, that's where the rub is. And going back to what I first said, it was when the governor ultimately signed this, the idea was that they sit down, there will be a special session to come back and hopefully address, fix some of those
issues.
things to avoid lawsuits. And part of that was, so the director of DNR, where the energy, division of energy and everything else falls under, his name's Joel Ferry, and he was tasked by the governor, and he's former legislator, so he has the respect of the House and the Senate. He was kind of asked to kind of be the governor's spokesman of trying to pull together the players and to say, look, what can we do to fix this? And then also, candidly work with, now that we have something written, work with the EPA and say, okay, guys, you keep signaling that, you gotta put your money where your mouth is and be upfront and say, this is what we will or won't do, because if you don't, we're gonna end up in this, problem where we're not gonna be able to fix it. And so the hope and optimism is, I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but it's still optimistic that in the next, the target timeframe is May or June to possibly come back on the interim day and have a special session. This would be one of, I'm sure, a few items where they would come back and address and try to fix some of the, once you get away from the emotion and the ego and everything of the session, and now, okay, guys, let's actually analyze how do we make this thing not implode and work. And so that's the goal, and that's still early on. Everybody kind of disappears after session, and now you start to get people back and ready to start discussing. So it's too early to know if there's any, real progress there. But that's kind of the long play here, is that they come back, hopefully fix some of that, the mandate stuff, because a lot of the bill actually is fine. There's just some.
Our correspondent with IPA, I can't remember her name, who corresponds with us, but they were panicked at first, but when that sixth bill was passed, she wasn't panicked. She was saying, there's more to the story, what you were just saying. So they must feel a little, I'll find out more this week, but they seem to be, of course they don't like it, but she wasn't panicking and felt like something's gonna work, what you're saying.
Yeah, and again, like I say, the sixth largely represented, I think it was the fourth. The fifth was what passed out of the Senate, and the fifth, and again, got to be too late in the session, and there was too much emotion involved. I think if there had been more time and candidly cooler heads, we could have gotten to something everybody would agree to. Because the reality is, of the things that mattered, the fourth and the fifth and ultimately the sixth weren't that different. There's some very key parts that are different, but it's really one of those things that the practicality is it would force certain decisions regardless, but mandating certain things is where the rub comes. And that's where, IPA is saying, guys, we can't have this. We have to defend our autonomy and our ability to do this. Otherwise, we, jeopardize bonds, we jeopardize our permits with the EPA and everything else. Because they talked about dual permitting and all these types of things where it's like, great, but if that doesn't work, you can't force us to sell something or to do something. That's a takings. If you want to buy it, and, that's ultimately in there that they can buy it, but they get to determine the price. I mean, it's kind of this whole thing that it's a legal, nightmare the way they finalize it, but a few tweaks, and again, that bill really wouldn't be, it should give, again, if you got cooler heads, it should give a win to those that need a win and allow the project to move forward. So hopefully that will happen over the next 2 months. But yeah, we're not certainly as far apart as we were at the beginning of the session.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, did I answer it? Okay.
Yep, yes, that's right.
So look for that in the coming, interims, May or June would be what I would anticipate. Part of the goofy part about all this is elections are going on, and so how does that play into it, and timing, and so, that could be the only reason that would delay it, I guess, but that's the plan anyway.
Thank you.
When you look at the session overall, the League of Cities and Towns, which obviously you are a member of, they do a heck of a job with a quarter of the bills that were introduced this session, they were tracking.
Which again is a record number of bills introduced as well as passed.
Yeah.
They keep setting
Every
new
year it
records.
just keeps going up.
And the governor made a statement that he would like lesser bills next year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Well,
there's
they
no.
say that.
He doesn't control that.
Let's lesser bills here.
Yeah. That's been a mantra since I was in the body. And in fact, they introduced prioritization of bills, where you prioritize a certain number of bills as a legislator, and then the other bills, they'll get drafted, if they get drafted, whenever the priority bills get done. Each legislator, they change it each year, but I think this year they had 5 priority bills. So when you look at that, you've got 104 legislators, that's 520 bills, and just priority bills.
How many things do we do on the council? Not 100 and not 500 and something.
That's just
And we
policy.
meet 2 weeks, every 2 weeks.
Challenge accepted.
Okay.
Over the course of the 45 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is another
Yeah.
issue. There was a bill at the end of the session as well that may have some residual effect. It's Senate Bill 185. It's Residential Building Inspection Amendment Bill that Senator Vickers, the majority leader, carried. It started out that builders could come in with whatever inspector they wanted. It ended up being amended to be significantly better than it was when it started. I don't think it'll be a problem for Murray, but
Well, the nice part is you have, I believe, and it's,
veto for it.
what you have is you have a list of approved inspectors they can choose from, and the theory being if developers are always choosing one inspector and they're always, you guys can rip them off your list. And so it's kind of this back doorway, I think, of getting everybody, again, back to earlier, everybody gets a win. So it's not, it still allows some flexibility, there's a pool, but still it gives you guys control over the pool. And the hope being that, if there is an occasional bad actor, that you guys will be able to weed that out and everything else will work. But yeah, to Corey's point, it's a long ways from having my neighbor come in and inspect instead versus, having a pool. So I think, kudos to especially, Corey and I obviously work with CAM, but the league. I mean, this was a much better year, candidly, for the league, I think, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
And I'll attribute a lot of that. It'll be interesting to see how it goes forward. But part of that is changing of filing deadlines. In that, for the first time ever, the legislature, the filing for re-election happened before the session in 1st of January. Whereas historically, it's always been the week after session. So going into session, legislators knew if they had an opponent or not. And in an election year, there's always a little bit of hesitancy because I don't want to make somebody mad or this could be used
Yeah.
against me. But when you're staring, one of two things: either it emboldens you because there's nobody filed, or you got somebody just sitting there in the gallery writing down everything, and you're facing that person. And there were, some key legislators that had people that, I think one of them actually being the current Speaker of the House, a former mayor, filed to run against him. And that certainly changed his approach, I believe, as well as several other legislators of, kind of tempered a little bit of just saying, well, let's, and the reality is there's been a lot done, as you guys obviously know, in the municipal area, and as it relates to land uses and other things. And it's kind of like, let's let a year or two
ongoing.
for this to work
Yeah.
before we keep pulling different levers and not really understanding it. So I think to a degree that on a lot of issues of which these types of issues are controversial, a lot of controversial issues kind of got, pushed down and pushed out because there was not an appetite to really pick a lot of fights, honestly, this year because, there was quite a few members of those caucuses that are staring at opponents and, recognizing that, they come around, if they're in the House every 2 years and every 4 years, I'm sure hitting you guys up for endorsements and support. And,
No, people
and
I've
everything
never
else, so.
known, if they showed up, I go, hi, how are you? They go, how are you? Give me a hug.
But yeah, I think that changed a little bit. And then one other bill, and we're happy to answer any questions. There's it's funny, it started out of the House as a transportation bill. It was run by Representative Spenlow. Senator Cullimore was the Senate sponsor. It came out of the House as just a bill that did some funding for Sandy City. And then it got subbed in the Senate and everything got put in, a bunch of stuff got put in there. Specifically, and for two council members that are new, not aware, there's a fund that's known affectionately as the Quarter of the Quarter Fund. And what that is the state has authorized now 4 full quarters and a final 0.2, so a total of 1.2% that can be imposed across the state for different transportation and transit functions. Salt Lake County has imposed the full 1%, not the final, what they call fifth or 0.2. So there's 4 individual quarters in Salt Lake County that have been imposed. Unique to Salt Lake County is 2, maybe even 3, I think it's 2, and also some registration fee dollars inside of Salt Lake County are captured, and that's why it's called a quarter of a quarter, because a couple of those quarters, they peeled back a quarter of that quarter and held it in a restricted account at the state legislature. Now, the way that works is the UDOT holds it, it sits there until it is prioritized or spent by the legislature. It has to be spent on projects in Salt Lake County because they are local county tax dollars, but it doesn't have to go through the county or anything else. That UDOT specifically holds that, and wherever those funds are directed, those projects are funded through that fund.
Directed legislatively.
Directed legislatively. So a city or the county, they can't spend it outside of Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County is the only place that has this. What it goes back to, honestly, to give a little history, goes back to Marty Stevens when he was from Salt Lake. He might actually represent part of Murray. if I remember right, but anyway,
No,
so.
Marty didn't.
Was he
No,
not Marty?
No,
Okay.
he was far west.
Was he west? Oh, that's right, he was up north, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, he and other, as this was coming down anyway, they captured a piece of it, because they want to prioritize, because it's Salt Lake County, it's a lot of money. So that, when Speaker Greg Curtis, who did, represents Sandy, kind of the same thing, he didn't want to give it all to UTA, because that's really where most of the Salt Lake County dollars go. He wanted to capture some for some road projects, because as he was sitting there looking, he's like, look, there's all these smaller roads that are not getting attention and funding, and so he grabbed a piece of that for this fund. Long story short, a piece of this big, House Bill 48 goes in and spends some of that money. And in that, Murray worked to get, Murray has 1.25 that goes towards a boulevard.
1.25 million.
Yeah, 1.25 million to the boulevard. That will be, starting July 1st, it'll be available and do that. And every few years, we're able, there's a group of us that kind of help set it up, run and propose and kind of build up support and go and through and kind of spend it down. And so that was this year. And so we've done that a few times before, but that'll be something I think that'll be very helpful to Murray. And, and again, it's just something that comes in on the local road. So that, there was other transportation stuff, but that specifically will obviously impact Murray. And then, I don't know, Corey, that's kind of, if you guys have any other questions or anything else you want to hear from us.
Well, you say for the developers, affordable housing, and I asked them when I was up there, what's your definition of affordable housing? I mean, what are we looking at for these developers to build the houses? It's still gonna be.
$350,000 is the number that I've heard.
So it's basically no finished basement, no fireplace, no garage,
Or townhomes.
or it could be a townhome.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then when I was reading through the material, there's people, legislators that did not vote or they were absent. Do they have to say why they didn't vote on, or they just, no?
No.
No, so one thing you can't do is you can't abstain for a conflict or something. So you can't stand there, step up and not vote. So if you're there, you have to vote.
Right.
If you're on the floor.
If you're on the floor.
You're on the
If
floor,
you're,
yeah.
and there are those that each day are excused, there's some excused absences
Right.
that have a reason. And then there's others that they can be in a committee or off in a meeting or
Right.
wherever else, and they don't, so they may not. Now, if they, it's a prerogative of the sponsor, if he can get support from the body and the House or the Senate to do a call, that means they basically go drag whoever from, to the point, if they, in history, I haven't seen this in years and years, but they'll send the highway patrol to go grab somebody from wherever and drag them.
I heard that happen one time. They had to pull somebody off of the hill back. And
Yeah, and so they can go to that extreme, they can force them, but.
Way into Uinta Basin.
Yeah, but most of the time that never happens. They do calls at times because as things are crazy, everybody's, everywhere and
Okay.
they'll look around and be like, there's not enough supporters here. I want to do a call to basically get my people back here to vote. But yeah, if you're on the floor, you have to vote, but there'll be quite a few times where especially members of leadership and other things that are off towards the end when it's funny, most of the votes are taken.
Negotiating in the back.
Are negotiating the budget and they're missing, because what's funny is in that last week, there's more votes than by a large margin, more votes than there are the previous 5-6 weeks. And so those you see, there's a handful of people that miss tons of votes because they're just off the floor doing
I mean, it's just an accelerate. I mean, the last week is just like,
Yeah.
It was intense.
yeah.
The last day was intense.
Fire.
Yeah, well, last day's crazy. Because, last day being they start bringing out groups of bills from rules and throwing them up on the board. And they'll do and the first bill on that list will be up 10 minutes after it shows up there. And so it's,
It's a fun
there's
time.
good of game played, so.
Yeah.
Interesting session.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
They all are.
But I think I understand it, and then about the third week when I'm up there, it's like, I still don't understand you people. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
for the opportunity to represent Murray.
Oh,
I mean, it's a privilege.
yeah.
And the nice thing is, your representatives and senators really respect and love you. I mean, that's not always, you guys more, because I do work for some other cities, and more than any other city, really, Salt Lake City might be one. Most people, legislators, don't really care about their city. You guys have done a great job of
Yeah.
individually
Building
spending time building those.
relationships.
And that's really key, because that, and Because really Corey and I, a lot of what we do is really outside of your core kind of guy. They're gonna listen more to you guys than Corey and I, all we're doing is relaying your message to them directly. Obviously we're more helpful as outside of that, but what's unique for Murray is the relationships. So I'd say continue that. It's been very helpful and is very important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Okay, so we would like to welcome Councilwoman Rosalba Dominguez in today. Thank you. Now we are on to discussion on an ordinance related to land use amends the general plan to adopt the Murray City Central District MCCD Strategic Area Plan. Phil Markham is presenting. Welcome, Phil.
Can I close this? Is that okay?
I don't know
Yeah.
why we would need it, but yeah, go ahead.
Just give me a little bit of room here.
That's an answer.
I know she is.
Let's see.
Do we need it?
Okay, let's see. This is the one that I plug in, I think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Okay. Stuff scattered all over the place here. Okay, how about that? So far, so good, man. So,
Feeling strong.
well, thank you for allowing me to present this tonight. As you know, we've been undertaking this study for quite some time, and we're pleased to present this to you. The plan did receive a positive recommendation forwarded to you from the Planning Commission, and so with that, we'll get started. We contracted with Downtown Redevelopment Services to do a strategic plan for the MCCD. And just as some background, the area in orange there is the Murray City Center District. And so it basically runs from Fox Elder Street to Center Street, east and west. And north and south, it goes just north of 4800 South and then all the way down to basically Murray Park on the east side of State Street, but the apartments on Vine on the west side of State Street. So it's a large district. However, the area that we concentrated this on was basically the Block 1 area. That was our major area of focus. And just to give you a little bit of history, the MCCD was first adopted in 2011. And it was adopted in response to a phased development of the downtown area. Here are some renderings and some ideas from that initial concept in 2011. And as you can see, it's quite dense. It was phased. I'm not sure over how many years it was supposed to be phased, but if you look at the development that was proposed at that time, it's much more dense. We have higher heights of the buildings, and it's drastically different from what the citizens have indicated to us that they would like to see in downtown over the years. So naturally, this did fail, and it was because the residents did not support this. So in response, we undertook this study, and this is the recommendation that has been forwarded to you. So the existing conditions, you can see Block 1 here. And the reason we only focused on Block 1, the city owns the majority of the property on Block 1. There's one building, the Harker building, that we do not, the Harker and Murray Merck, which are now referred to as the Dar building. They are not owned by the city. However, everything else from 4800 South to 5th Avenue is owned by Murray. And so it allows us more flexibility in looking at those areas.
And say that again? How much do we own?
We own everything from State Street and 4800 South back to, Hanover Street for Block 1,
Yeah.
and then down to 5th Avenue.
Oh,
Okay? So the area from 5th Avenue to Vine Street, that's primarily owned by the Wright family, and then you also have J. Murray Music and the bank as well. We did look at those areas, but our major focus was on Block 1.
And that's for everything you guys did with the
Right.
organization, correct?
Right, so you will see recommendations for that entire area from Vine Street to 4800 South, okay?
these were some of the conditions that were noted in the study. The surface parking lots constitute the majority of the historic downtown area. There's a mismatch existing between the historic district status and the area's urban design elements. Pedestrian infrastructure is minimal, and bicycle-only infrastructure does not exist. Various occupants throughout the district have resulted in a mixed-use downtown. The new City Hall and Hanover Street and other public investments are a catalyst for change, and the RDA-owned properties are a prime opportunity to expand the downtown footprint and improve the overall experience downtown. So, if we look at this, you've got existing conditions over on the left-hand side. Those buildings in yellow are primarily the ones that the city owns. Now, there is the, 48, I can hardly read that. The first two buildings on State Street there.
Is it the ones in yellow or in
I can
green?
read them up on the screen better than I can my laptop. 4816 and 40.
It's 48. First two are
40.
48, 36, and 48.
4836 and 4840. We do not own those, okay? However, for the sake of the study and the planning recommendations, we are including those in these recommendations. And also, if you'll notice down at the bottom, we also have the bank indicated there. Obviously, we do not own the Wells Fargo
Right.
Bank. So again, this is a planning document. It's a vision for what could happen and the reasons why we feel that this is the best way to approach this. Now, recommendation number one from the study was that the city implement a form-based code. And we're very appreciative of the council giving us the money to pursue that. We have already developed an RFP, and that will be going out on the 17th. And so, yes, so hopefully, I can't remember for sure if it's a 2-week process. It may be a little bit longer than that, but we will be selecting a consultant and starting the form-based code process in May. We're really, really excited about that. Our goal is to finish that within 6 months, so we'll be very aggressive. And that will be the primary driver, one of the primary drivers of who is selected, both their qualifications and their ability to produce the desired result in that amount of time. So the plan recommended that we do that in 0 to 2 years. We've obviously accelerated that. And you will see that we're pursuing some things in a more accelerated schedule as we look at these recommendations than some of these had recommended. But working with the mayor's office, we're really confident and excited that we can accelerate this. Recommendation number 2 was to update and enforce the downtown design guidelines and 0 to 2 years. So we need to develop these guidelines and we need to strictly enforce them. This picture gives you somewhat of a rendering of what we have received feedback from the public, what they would like to see. Brick construction, low profile buildings. That is not to say that you're only going to see 2-story buildings there. However, you are not going to see 10-story buildings. Unless you folks decide not to change. Currently, 10-story buildings are acceptable downtown. And currently, the Home to Suites Hotel and the Vine Street Apartments are also acceptable for downtown. So that shows you the mismatch that we have going on. We need to get that under control. Form-based code is going to allow us to do that and have a nice uniform look throughout the district.
So with the form-based code also, it would hit this
Absolutely.
goal.
This is a mid-block crossing that it breaks up the buildings, so you don't have a solid wall of buildings up and down State Street from 48th to 5th Ave.
Kind of like
We
what's
will-
on the east side,
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
What I'm saying is the enforce the design guidelines. The
Yes.
form-based code would accomplish this objective.
Absolutely, yes. They would have to build to the guidelines outlined in the form-based code, absolutely. And we feel that we can, well, I'll get to another recommendation and talk a little bit about that in a second. Number 3 is perform a parking warrant analysis, and this is going to be very important. They have 3 to 6 years here. This will happen sooner than that because this will allow us to look at the parking needs for downtown, and it's going to go a long way in eliminating the preponderance of surface parking that we have down there. First of all, it's wasted space. It's space that can be used for buildings, for plazas, for pedestrian access. The worst thing in the world is to have it just flat and marked out for cars. This will show us where we need to put parking structures and where we need smaller surface parking lots in that. So we will be undertaking that as well.
Have we ever considered doing it in lieu of parking? Or we do?
We could talk about that. We've not seriously discussed it since I've been involved in the department.
What do you mean?
So instead of a developer building a parking lot, they give us the money and we build like a shared lot that they all use.
Sure.
And we take their money instead of them paying it themselves.
It's-
That would decrease empty parking spots.
I think you will see a partnership between city and developers with regard to parking structures. Because one of the limiting factors of the type of development that we're looking at, it makes it very difficult economically to afford to build parking structures when you don't have large buildings. You don't have that revenue coming in from larger buildings. So the city may have to step up and work out some agreements, as you're saying. And that's fine. That's to the benefit of everyone. If the city sees fit and the developer is in agreement, then yes, we're all for working with agreements like that. Recommendation number 4 is to create an infrastructure project schedule to improve the multimodal accessibility within the city-owned right-of-way. And this is basically just to improve the pedestrian-friendly feel, the bicycle access, and work with UDOT also to see if we can mitigate some traffic concerns on State Street. We have to be realistic and know that we're not going to get the speed limit drastically reduced on State Street. But perhaps there are some types of crossings that we can work with, to bring. We lost a crossing when State Street was rebuilt. We had one at Fifth Ave. It'd be nice to be able to bring that back and enhance it so it's safer for the public. So there's maybe an island in the middle where they can stand, if they can only make it halfway across the street during the timed event or whatever. So these are some of the things we'll work on. We have to make downtown more pedestrian friendly because they can park their car in a parking stall or in a parking stall in a parking garage, and then we want them to experience downtown. We don't want them to drive from one end to another. Partnering with UDOT to improve multimodal accessibility on State Street. Here it is again.
So going back to 4, the engineering department suggested we shut down Poplar. Am I remembering this correctly? What?
There are a lot of ideas and suggestions. One would be to make it like a festival street, and many times with those, it can primarily be a pedestrian street, but you still have the capability of opening it up to limited traffic in a way. And so those are things that can be engineered. And there are streets up in Salt Lake that are dual use streets like that. And so, yeah, that's
They do that
a real
on Main
possibility.
Street in Salt Lake during the summertime.
Main Street is one. They're considering permanently closing that
They
to
are,
traffic.
yeah.
A new development too is Mill Creek. They allow access to cars, and then when the festivals.
Right,
they
right.
don't.
So
Yeah.
there are ways, a dual purpose street. And I really like that idea of it primarily being maybe a festival street. And when needed, you can open it up to limited traffic under very controlled circumstances.
I'd like to see it go not just to Poplar, but Fifth Avenue between
Sure.
Hanover and State Street.
Sure.
Make
And
that
as-
whole block.
As we
Yeah.
move through the
Yeah.
process, all those things will flesh out. And working with the developer as well. We can express that desire and they can look at their development and build accordingly as well. So we tell them what's important to us. Okay, and we talked about State Street. They have 7 to 10 years on State. And I don't know. I'm much more impatient than that. Okay? Not because I won't be here in 7 to 10 years. But
Predicting your death.
No, I mean in this building. Okay.
Elfon will
In
be.
this building, yes, he will. Yes, and he'll be updating this thing. I really sense some true momentum right now
Yeah.
in the city. Not only on the part of municipal government, but of the citizens as well. And so that's why I'm optimistic that 7 to 10 years is going to come much quicker than we
I
think.
think it's a big part of the leadership that we have right now. And even with all of you guys, with everybody.
Well, we want to capitalize
We've seen
on
it
that.
just been sitting for so long.
Sure.
Well, we talked about how well Triumph went with all
Oh.
of us. So we just opened the door and said, what do you think?
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Recommendation number 6 is to program public spaces within downtown Murray. That is a plan that the mayor is already working on. I'm told with future positions and so forth. It's important that we give people a reason to come down here and celebrate.
Yeah.
To use these places, to make them available for public and private events and that even, Let's make it an exciting place to be, and that's how you have an engaging, beautiful downtown. Recommendation number 7, to negotiate and enter into a master development agreement for the RDA-owned property in downtown Murray. 3 to 6 years. I can guarantee you it will happen faster than 3 to 6 years. Guaranteed right now. We're very excited about some of the discussions that we are having preliminarily with a number of developers. Elvon Farrell, our economic development specialist, is leading that area of discussion. And we're getting all kinds of different ideas and impressions from these different people. And it's been very good to us because they're opening us up to what the realities of development are as well. If you want this type of development, then they have to see this, this, and this. And, it runs the gamut. And so it's been very educational for us, and it allows us to see our options out there before us.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Based off of this and what we're about to enter with the form-based coast, is it deterring developers to say, hey, I don't want to be there because
Not
of
at
the
all.
restrictions?
Not at all.
Okay.
They want a firm picture. They want to know what we want. They want to be able to build to a plan that they know will be accepted, and they won't have roadblocks, and they won't have delays and so forth. It makes for a much smoother process for everyone involved.
And that's what I've heard as well
Absolutely.
from that side.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, that's my goal. And I know a lot of people in my district with
Yeah.
all that. Yeah.
And we've said the form-based code should take no more than 6 months. In the event that the city found what they deem to be the ideal developer with the ideal plan, and everyone's really excited and everyone's on board and they want to get going, while that process is still not 100% complete, we have talked to developers and they are very comfortable with working while the code is being finalized too. So I really think we're pointing in the right direction right now. Recommendation number 8 is if the downtown revitalization efforts are successful, to expand the scope of the study to the east side of State Street. And I think that goes without saying. These standards will apply to the entire NCCD. However, a successful Block 1 development will spread like wildfire. People will see how successful it is. They'll see how beautiful it is. And they'll want to be part of that. And it will emphasize how out of date other areas are. And so hopefully it will have that catalyst effect, that it will start spreading through all of downtown there.
And then on the number 8, it says on the bottom, necessary step is the city and RDA should engage property owners on the west side of State Street in identifying opportunities for improvement and growth. Are we talking about Club 48 and Ice House and
Well,
Hangers?
Not specifically. That's just on the west side of State Street, where Block 1 is. Although, yes, we do believe that redevelopment will spread.
Okay,
Absolutely. And, we're not trying to push
Oh.
out any business or
Yes.
anything, but we're just looking for an overall improvement in the area. And I do believe it will come.
And a part of that too is like facade improvements
Absolutely.
and funding of that
Yeah.
or supporting
Yeah.
that.
There are a lot of different tools.
So existing businesses can stay
Yes,
with,
yes,
So it
absolutely.
doesn't mean like it will spread that will push them out. It will
No,
spread in the sense that
that's
facades can be
exactly right.
updated.
Exactly. And so,
Back and forth a little bit.
sure.
So on the nitty gritty, it says that we should be adding things like bike racks and trash receptacles and benches pretty much immediately.
Right.
How realistic is that if we're not developed?
State Street, the State Street sidewalk in particular is not conducive to that. It's not big enough. there's really no reason to have those right there. I don't think anybody really wants to sit in front of those buildings, to be very honest with you.
We have some,
There is limited,
and we're getting some
Amenities.
requests to have moved.
Yeah, yeah.
No, they're not.
Oh, you
But
mean
if
like
we
the one by
widen
the bus
sidewalks
stop and
with
stuff like that?
redevelopment, there might be,
Yeah, and again, on State Street there, the buildings would have to come down.
Yeah.
Because we don't control State Street and the right of way. But,
Yeah.
you know, that is what we want to do. We also want to encourage people to move to the interior of the block as well. We will create a much better experience away from the State Street sidewalk, actually. And you can have rear entrances to buildings. You can have these plazas that we're talking about, the historic plaza. It can incorporate toward the rear of those buildings that can make them just as attractive as the front too. You know, where activity is off of the street. It's to the interior of the block.
are we creating competing interests then with walkability and facing inward? Because
Oh, no, I don't think so. The entire site would be, the walkability would be interconnected. The pedestrian feel, you'd be able to get easily from any quadrant of the development to another one. And, you know, that's why we have these passageways through the mid-block as well. That's why they're so important.
I guess, and also, is it gonna cut off the east side from the west side of State Street? If you're inward facing and block one becomes kind of an outdoor mall almost, it's gonna be challenging to create walkability from the west side to the east side.
You know, it's hard to say without a development to look at, you know, but those are considerations we can always bear in mind as we're looking at any potential development in that.
We
you know,
may
that we
find-
don't want to isolate people.
I mean, it could be that, you know, the one owner who has most of the property on the east side of State Street really looks at his development differently, you know what I mean? Or those business owners on that side.
Right.
It could change, but it's a matter of.
That will
we have
take a
control
little bit of
of-
time
yeah.
on the east side.
We have
You know,
control of
realistically,
one's
yeah, we don't
area.
control any of that directly like we do the west side. So,
Could
you
we
know,
incentivize them, maybe even in some areas?
you know, you have a mid-block crossing at State Street that's controlled, like we talked about, in Fifth Avenue, and that would help quite a bit as well. There is also, that right now, there are two access points right on the corner of 4800 South and State Street. The one closest to the corner, it's very close to the corner, that should probably go away and would go away with any development because the building would probably wrap around that corner. But we could score points with UDOT by eliminating that access, and maybe they would allow us to gain another one mid-block or something in addition to Fifth Avenue and that. So those are all things that can be worked on to help improve the accessibility. So the findings basically are the Murray City General Plan provides direction and implementation through 5 key initiatives. The requested general plan amendment has been carefully considered based on public input and review of city planning best practices. The recommendations outlined in the plan provide clear, objective goals for the city to move forward in implementing the plan and furthering the redevelopment in the downtown. The proposed amendment is in harmony with the goals and objectives, with the goals and initiatives of the Murray City General Plan. And on March 7th, 2024, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and received numerous comments. The Planning Commission voted 6-0 to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council. You know, we have 3 weeks until this will come before you again. And I would really encourage you, if you have any questions at all, if anything comes up, please get in touch with us. We're more than willing to sit down with you and visit. We had a walking tour of the block today with Councilman Pickett and Councilwoman Cotter. We're happy to do that with you as well. So please let us know, and we'll answer any questions you have.
So it came up a lot in the planning commission meeting that we could present if we tear down the buildings as suggested that we would lose historical
We're
designation.
not tearing down
If,
anything that we don't own, correct, Phil?
but if we did according to the plan and we tore down the buildings that the plan suggests,
That we own.
That's true. Well,
any
yes,
of the buildings that suggest.
Well,
I know what you're saying.
I have the understanding, we only tear down what we own.
Well, sure, we can't tear down something.
Yeah.
we don't know.
We're not gonna tear down something that we
We're
don't
not,
own.
But, okay, let's say the plan goes 100% according to plan, which it won't, but theoretically. would we lose the historical designation status on State Street?
The area was historically designated as a historic district many years ago. It was just a local historic designation. It's not a national. No,
Or a
it carries.
state, is it a state?
It does not carry any significant restrictions or status as a historic district. It was identified as a historically significant area at one time. And
That was deemed by Murray.
yeah, and those individual buildings were identified also as historic structures. Now, that was changed. The ability to regulate that was changed several years ago when the Murray First Ward was removed. And all the property owner has to do now is send a letter to my office asking to be removed from the historic status, and we will do that. And that has happened to most of the buildings in that corridor. The developers,
As the owners.
the property owners don't want to be handcuffed, basically.
Well, which.
If an opportunity comes that, they feel is too good to turn down, they want to be able to exercise their property rights and do what they wish with their own property.
And has the owners of the Dart building done that?
Yes, it is not. It's not on the list. It's been removed. It was one of the first
And
ones
that
to
was
be
something
removed.
that they
Yeah.
decided themselves?
And we have talked to the owner of the Dar building, and so we're in communication with him, and we feel like we have a great relationship with him, and we'll see what happens. But to my knowledge, right now the city has no plans to purchase the building right
Right.
now or anything.
And historically, the only time it has come up is when we were in negotiations with, who was the previous? Edlin. They wanted to buy the property in exchange, we would,
Yeah.
they
And
wanted
that was-
money from us and then that didn't fall
The
through.
mayor
So that
shed
could be,
light on that.
yeah,
That
And I
was
assume
long
that you
before.
get a developer in here, that'll happen again.
yeah,
They'll
that
want
could
to.
happen,
I would
yeah.
assume when you take this, and since the DAR, they wanna sell, then you can't, it'd be nice to say you can't, I mean, not. I
You
don't-
can't control,
Yeah,
yeah,
just go, well, the best example I have for you is look what you have by your street.
yeah, oh, I
They
know,
were gonna have a beautiful 55 and older,
and it didn't happen,
No.
yeah,
because the developer said, I'm done.
yeah,
I could have been in your district.
I know,
See?
you still can.
Well, no, I don't want to live in that kind of thing.
But what I'm saying is that it's not, we can set the plans in place, but it's really up to the owner too and
Right.
people who come into that space.
If
to
he
purchase,
wanted
yeah.
to keep that building there, he could keep that building there.
Right.
That's what basically comes
And
down
that's
to.
also
They own
something
it,
he can-
they determine the fate of that building. Absolutely.
Or not sell at all.
Yeah.
Right. They
Yeah.
determine if they can keep it as is. Sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, it would have been nice if we got this, because when in my reading, it talks about the form-based code quite a lot. And I wouldn't have been up at the dais and saying, no, I don't want to give you the money.
You shouldn't have to worry about that at all.
But if I had this report that was generated from the open house and I saw this,
I mean,
but I understand now the form-based code and why it's needed but I can just sit down with you with all my little
Absolutely.
things that I have written up but I thought this
You
was,
know, we know the urgency to get the
Yes.
form-based code taken care of. We don't
Yes.
want that to impede any of this progress. That's why we came to you early with that. And now it's the turn of, it's our turn to review this.
so we have this. We have our survey that we did several years ago, and we'll have the form-based code,
Right.
and then let the developers come.
Yep.
Because they know that we are listening to the citizens and we're doing and trying to accommodate to the citizens. What happens to the other buildings that we do not own, we have nothing to say about that. That is somebody's building. We're not going in and we're not dictating what is gonna happen to those buildings because we don't own those buildings. And so,
I think we have as clear a picture right now
yeah,
as we have ever had
Yep.
to move forward. And that is what we would hope council will do in the end.
yeah,
Can I just add a word?
sure.
The walking tour today was very helpful.
Oh,
I highly recommend to walk with Phil and his team as they kind of walk you through and talk you through and answer all kinds of questions. That was really, really helpful
Yep.
in solidifying. I also feel the momentum. I feel the balls rolling the right direction after so many years of being stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
And it's exciting and thrilling to be in
Yeah.
Murray. I'm excited for what's going to be happening in Murray in the
I
next
agree.
years. Thank you, Phil.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
This was really good. I just love the plans. I just love that,
Well, good.
what is it called, wedding cake
Oh,
style?
that's
Yes, I was very impressed and thank you, Elvon, for the tour. I really appreciate it and thank you, Phil, for your presentation.
welcome.
Okay, so now we're on to, let me grab my notes so I can see here. Discussion on an ordinance, relating to land use amendments. The general plan from parks and open space to medium density residential and amends the zoning map from A1 agricultural zoning district to R-1-6 medium density single family for the property located at 1177 West Bullion Street, Murray City. Phil, welcome.
Okay. Jake Larson of Lartet Properties has approached us.
Is he here today?
He is here.
Okay,
Yes.
could he, yeah, and he's the one in the blue shirt.
And he is requesting a general plan and zone map amendment of the property that's commonly known as the Salt Lake County Fish and Game property. So the property is currently owned by Salt Lake County Fish and Game Foundation, a private nonprofit. And the owners of the property have engaged with Mr. Larson to pursue a rezone to facilitate a residential development. So they are in agreement with Jake on this. And what the surrounding land uses to this property are basically all single-family residential with some A1 agricultural mixed in. Now, there are a variety of densities. There is A1 where you can have one home per acre. And there are also R18, the Ivory subdivision is
So are you
R18.
saying that I could buy two of Mr. Larson's property and put a big house on it?
But if
could
it
I
was-
do
If
that?
it was like this, if it wasn't rezoned,
Okay. If it does get rezoned?
it's eligible to have homes on it right now.
Okay, oh, it,
It could, yes.
okay,
But the number would, and the cost of the property, the cost of the home
Right.
would be in the millions, yes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we have R110, A1, R18, and A1 surrounding this property. The most significant residential development is the Ivory subdivision that backs onto this property.
yeah,
They are R18.
Yeah.
Mr. Larson
they
is-
are, they're an R18?
Yes, yeah. They are R18.
That they are R16.
No,
Oh.
that's R18. And so he is requesting R16, which basically is a home on a 6,000 square foot
Right.
lot, rather than an 8,000 square foot lot, which is what R18 is. And so the uses, the permitted uses between R16 and even agriculture, A1, are very, very similar. It's just basically the density and the fact that on agriculture, you can have animals. Once it's changed to a subdivision zoning, you can't have
Oh,
animals.
so they can't have any animals if they buy one of his pieces of
They
property?
could not have a farm animal.
They can have a farm.
Right. You do allow chickens.
Oh, we do
and
do
bees,
chickens
yeah.
now. Yes, we do
Yeah.
chickens, okay.
Okay.
Beehive?
The property is approximately 2.5 acres, 2.46 acres. And it's, in the current general plan, it's designated as open space and parks. However, there's no intention from the Parks Department in their master plan or in any plans they have to purchase or develop this at any point into additional parkland. So, really, the inevitability is that it will be residential zone. And R16, we feel, is an excellent use for this.
Is there a reason why he doesn't want to do R18?
You can get more homes in R16. He'll
So he
provide,
wants more homes?
right,
Okay,
he'll provide more homes in an R16 than he can in R18.
okay.
That is the primary reason, I believe. And so the way this is in harmony with the general plan, objective number 9 of the general plan says that the city should provide a mix of housing options and residential zones to meet a diverse range of needs related to lifestyle and demographics, including age, household size, and income. That's what that's the niche that R16 fills.
Yeah.
They're smaller lots.
Great for first-time home buyers.
Don't necessarily have
I
to
don't
be
think these are
much
first-time
smaller
homeowners.
homes. You can put a large home on an R16
Oh, yeah,
parcel. And-
because they don't want the yard, but they want the
Right.
big house.
Right. Now, we do not have a concept plan from Mr. Larson yet. I can't tell you what
What it's gonna
the development would look like or that's putting the cart before the horse. First thing first is we need
Right.
to come to you with the rezone to see if it is possible for him to develop it.
Yes.
Once the rezone has taken place and the general plan amendment has taken place, then he can proceed with plans to submit to us so that we can go to the planning commission and make sure that that's approved and it's a proper fit for the area.
Well, I'm not speaking for Mr. Larson, but we have a development that just kitty corner to my house on Bullion. And his structures, homes are very, very nice. And this will be really nice to have something there.
I agree. It will clean up
Instead
the
of-
property.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what a few residents have said to me, that they appreciate that this is going to be not a.
And this is in my district.
It is.
And once I learned about it, I rode my bike over and talked to people who were outside and said, what are your thoughts about that? And overwhelmingly, I just got thumbs up from everybody.
Yeah. You know, the traffic on Bullion, but don't tell me about traffic since I've been here since '85.
Well, the number of
Don't wanna hear
houses, the number of houses that would be allowed in
Yes,
that small parcel would not have a significant.
Yeah, it's only
Yeah.
11 homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another objective that it satisfies in our general plan is to preserve and stabilize current neighborhoods.
Yep.
It does that.
Yep.
And also encourage housing options for a variety of age, family size, and
Yep.
financial levels. Now, that's not to say that, these are going to be cheaper houses.
Oh.
I can't say. We haven't seen plans,
Okay.
but I can assure you that the planning commission would seek to protect the flavor of the existing neighborhood. They're not
Yeah.
going to do anything to damage that. And I don't think Mr. Larson would either.
Knowing Mr. Larson, no.
Does he own the other quadrant that is not in this? He owns.
No, I believe
just owns that.
the Fish and Game is going to keep that small area where the pond is.
And they said in the planning and zoning meeting that the gentleman that does own it, or the little nonprofit people, they were going to improve it and have like fishing one day out of the year
I
for the
believe so.
kids to come and fish and all
Yep,
that.
that's-
Okay,
That's
perfect.
But we can't, that's not a condition.
Oh, no, but that was very nice that he made
Sure.
that statement during that
So
meeting.
I don't know if any of you have any specific questions about the property or that. And again, this will be 3
I've seen that
weeks.
property develop my whole life.
It's been
That
there a
whole
long time.
area,
Yep,
it
there
has been a long,
time.
it was, I remember it was just all fields and few houses back there, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank
I
you,
will get out of your way. Thank you.
thank you for everything. Okay, we are now on our last discussion of a non-monetary assistance or free fee waivers for nonprofits. Jennifer Kennedy is next. You have 10 minutes.
I actually have. So I want to emphasize first and foremost, these are fee waivers for this budget year. These are not the ones that we are currently accepting for next budget year that we'll be discussing in another month or so. These are for this budget year that ends June 30th.
And they've already had a fee waiver.
So there's 2 applications here that we're talking about. The first one is for the power department.
Oh, right, gotcha,
And
yes.
for their Navajo project, and I believe the reason they did not ask for this ahead of time is because they weren't sure if they were gonna go this year or next year.
Right.
They were able to go this year, and so you can see from their application, the amount that it's going to be. The assistance amount is $29,000, which is for labor, equipment, and use and per diems for their employees. So that's what that money would be for. The second fee waiver is from the Murray Chamber. This is for their annual golf tournament. They did apply for one of these already this fiscal year. They had an event in, I'm trying to think.
The summer?
Yeah,
No, it was last
September.
year, September.
September. And
I
I,
think it was the 9th or 10th.
it's my understanding that because of the hot air balloon festival they're trying to put on, they need to move their golf
Oh,
tournament
that's
up. So
right.
they're asking for waivers of golf cart fees for May.
And it's not the fee waiver for the use of the golf course, just
Their
for the
application
carts.
says it's for golf carts.
Okay, so they will have to pay for the use of the course.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
You guys are only approving.
Does GL know?
What was the question?
So we give, the city is gonna let them use the golf cart. Will that also give them free access to the course?
No.
So they have to pay for the course,
That's correct.
but they get the use of the carts?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's $20 per cart times 64 carts.
Okay.
So, sorry, I don't have the number.
And they've already had one of these in this budget year,
They have,
2023, 2024.
they have. We don't
Okay.
have any guidelines that says they can only have one. We don't have anything like that.
Should the council look at that? Maybe have a guideline of some kind, so they're
I think
not
this is
keeping.
just a one-off because of their balloon festival, right?
It's just, they're just
I think
pushing
so
it,
too.
so they're not gonna come back in September again, are they?
Well, they could.
They could come back. We're accepting fee waivers for next budget year right now.
But they haven't
So
submitted
they
one for
could-
next year.
I'm not sure who's submitted at this point or not. So it is possible they could do one.
They could come back for the balloon festival or something. Yeah.
Yeah, they could.
Which
So I
is a
just
new
want,
event.
yeah, it's a new event. So I just wanted to take a few minutes in the committee of the whole to explain why we have these. It'll be 2 separate public hearings. I have asked someone from the chamber to be here.
Is there anybody here from the chamber? I don't see anybody.
Probably not because it's not the council meeting yet.
Oh,
So do you guys have any questions on these
Is it
or?
the Navajo? Do they do that every year, or is it every other year?
Fair.
I was gonna say it
Depends.
depends. We've done it consecutive years and then we've skipped. I guess the needs of
Who
it.
determines how often it happens?
I think they,
I would say Greg would be the one that
Yeah.
would present it to me.
I know,
COVID kind of screwed it up a little bit for a couple years.
Yeah, because we didn't go during that time.
So just like to make sure we're doing it every year.
Yeah.
If there's,
I mean, if there's 100
With the
homes,
council's thing, we'd probably do that, so.
and
Yeah.
was it last council meeting, the committee of the whole, where they said 100 homes got electricity? Okay, let's get some more.
well, I think even
So-
like UAMPS will participate with it,
Right.
with the other states. Other states do come
Oh,
as well,
absolutely, yeah.
and I
Yeah,
think
it's
they
not
do it
just
every year regardless. So
And
it
if
could
they
be,
have the manpower
it's just
and are do that.
depending the cities.
They would love to do that.
And if we have the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For funding, you know, outside that.
So those will be coming before you tonight at the council meeting.
Alrighty, so is there any other business? Oh, no. If not, I will adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting starts at 5 o'clock. Oh, look at this, people. You have some time. So I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.